it's her steadiness. Mother Teresa once said that nobody can do great things, but everybody can do small things with great love. I think that's pretty aptly describes her mother. So we got to see her, and I must say for my brother and sister and I, and for her in-law, daughter-in-laws and son-in-law, and her grandchildren, we got to see that while we were looking at a body dying, I think it's fair to say that we saw a soul. We saw the flip side of that. We saw that her soul was gaining strength and light and energy and vitality, as that was a flip side, and she was going that way. And this sounds awfully strange to say, but I think that was one of the most beautiful events I've ever seen, because she knew where she was going. She was happy about it. She earned her graduation. And at the same time, we've got 10 grandchildren, but just at the same time, then my mother was passing on to her new form of life. Katie was being born, coming from that form of life into this form of life. And to see the beauty of the transition of these eternal souls that we have as they make their passages through time and then back to their home was really almost unable to be put into words, as beautiful as that was. That doesn't sound like something you would say about watching someone die, does it? But it was that way. There's so many things that pass in front of us, and that we sit here today on what is really a spaceship Earth going about 100 million miles an hour, unaware of it. We have these microbes in our stomach that billions of them, in fact, that we couldn't live without. Because if they weren't there, we couldn't digest our food. And they couldn't live if they didn't live in us, and they're totally unaware of us. Just a few of the many spectacular things that happen in this great sweep of life that we're oblivious to. And without them, we wouldn't exist. We live on this little Earth, this little fragile Earth, with a thin veneer of air, which gives us all this plenitude in which we can go about our business, totally unaware of how fragile that is. And yet, all these things set us up so that we as individuals can come here and do our business and learn who we are. And it's pretty powerful. It's not something we think of often, but it is something we can think of at times like this. There's a book out that's not a lot to me. I've told some of you about it. It's called The Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, because for all of humanity, people have had these, you've seen these stories on TV, people die, and they go onto the other side, and they see a flash of that other side, and then they come back and they talk about it. And in those times, before, centuries ago, people would never mention that because they're most likely to get burned at the stake if they did. And up until just a few decades ago, people didn't talk about it because people would look at them as if they were really bizarre and out of their mind. And even now, a lot of people don't talk about it, but they started in the 80s doing studies about this. What's it like? What is coherent in all this? What do people who are Christians believe as opposed to people who are Jewish or Muslim or Hindu? Do they see different things? What about child experiences versus adult experiences? And they've come up with some fairly remarkable things. Pew Research study did a research about the mid-90s, which is the only valid one out, in which they estimated that about 4.5% of the American population has had these after-death experiences. And that would mean about 15 million Americans now, and that's a lot of people. Not all of them talk about it, but those who do can give us some fairly consistent reactions to what they see that I think are very helpful for us. They can tell us things that we hope are true, but don't know. Because usually when someone that we love dies, the first thing we think of is, boy, I hope there is eternal life for that person. I hope they still do continue to live. And at the same time, we think, I hope there's eternal life for me, because I'm going to be in this boat someday too. And those who have been there and come back report things that I think are helpful for us to know. In their own words, they say there is this light that is magnetic, more powerful and more loving than anything they've ever seen in their life, in which they feel at that time their own individuality, and they feel a great sense of humor, that this being in which they sense that they participate, that they have their own individuality. individuality, but they are absorbed by this greater light and energy that is so powerful that it loves them despite all that they might have done in their life, for all those things that they think are their inadequacies. And they say that they just, those who have been there don't want to come back. Those who do say they did not want to come back. It's so beautiful there. And that they discover at that time that in their lives, all those beauties and joys and wonders that they endured as they went through their lives were ways in which they could, without ever using words, say, well, so this is me. So that's who I am. So that's my best self. And all the difficulties that they had, because all of us make bad choices, and it's part of our human life. We make these things that we think will be great, and they turn out not to be. And all the things that happen to us that we think, how can this happen? It's not fair. It's not right. It's not just. It shouldn't be. I've tried to live a good life. Even those things, all those negative things, are ways in which we were able to discover, without ever using the words, that's not me. That's not who I am. I can't be that anymore, because I thought it was going to be great, but it was painful. I've got to be that. And then they say that that recognition comes through that even those difficult things were blessings, because they told us who they weren't, so that they could more passionately go after who they were. And they say that in that moment of their death, they discover that all their life, everything in their life, was a blessing and a gift. I think whenever anyone passes, we can look back and see all the good and sometimes see the difficulties in their life. I've done a lot of funerals for a lot of people, and I think very few people achieved as much as Mom did. Not great things, but a succession of wonderful things that left her to be an overtly and recognizably good person. She did just about everything. They went everywhere. I remember as a child, Nancy remembers this too, that she ran the religious goods store, a bunch of junk, really. But she ran the religious goods store at St. Anthony's, and in those days we thought it was great if you had all this little twaddling stuff. Mom had the little box with the money she carried around. She had eventually she got great cases, and she had all these. She had it all organized. She did the books for my father. Now that we all have grand offices, I remember their office was about this size. It was not as large as a good-sized closet today. Perfectly adequate for them. They loved it. They were in the whole business out of there. Then they went everywhere. And when I was in the seminary, 9 years, they could come up every month and visit me. It wasn't a month they missed in 9 years. That really says a lot. They drove from here to Canton, Ohio, and to Indiana and to other parts of Ohio every month for 9 years to visit me. It was important to me, and they knew it, and they never missed once. So, as we look back on Mom's life, I think we can say that she was such a good person that lived her life well, and that she would tell us, no sense in being sad about this, because it's where she wants to be. She knew that she was going to meet my father and her parents and her sister and her 2 brothers and her friends that had preceded her. She knew they'd be there waiting for her. She knew that. It was just taken for granted. She knew it. And sure, there was a party there. Lots of good drinks. Mom couldn't drink very much. The one time I remember that we had my best friend growing up was Jeff McKee. Remember Tim? And Jeff's father was a 4-star general in the Air Force, and we had him over for dinner one time. And I was back from the seminary, and they gave me the job of mixing the drinks, and I wasn't too good at it. So I just figured, well, you probably put that much scotch and that much water. So I gave it to Mom. She finished this thing off, and after a while we all came to the kitchen. She's got the basting thing like this on the turkey. Spread them all down, and my father comes in and says, "We got trouble." Sit her down at the table, and don't anybody say anything to her. So my mother's sitting at the table like this the whole time. And we tried to pass things around and just put some on our plate. And don't ask for any questions. That was one of the rare times I remember her being trashed, and I did it.